Hi, I'm Josh. I'm a tech here at SONDORS and I'll be helping you today assemble your MadMods Retro. I know you're excited to ride your bike, so let's get started. Once you have your MadMods all unpacked out of the box, you'll have everything you see here. You got your frame with the rear wheel attached already. You got your fork, handlebar, LED light for the front of the bike, pedals, toolkit, all the tools you need for this assembly. You got your battery, your reflectors, charger, and the front wheel. Before we get started with the assembly of our MadMods, go ahead and take your charger and battery and place at a charge on the side so that when you're done with the assembly, you can go for a ride. First tool you'll need is a 5mm hex key. You want to grab that hex key from your toolkit and loosen the top cap here on the front and remove the cap and set that aside. Okay, so for the first step, we'll want to install the fork onto your MadMods. You may want to have a friend nearby to lift the bike up for you or to hold it in place. If you don't have a friend nearby, you can lean the bike on inside and we can install the fork on that way. So before we get the fork onto the bike, we want to prepare the fork to be installed. So what you do is you got your top crown here. You'll take your 6mm hex key. You'll want to loosen the bolts on the side and pull that crown off. Once you loosen the bolts, it'll slide right off. You want to remove the first spacer on the steer tube and your fork's ready to be installed. So have your friend lifted the bike. You want to slide off the dummy fork. To do that, you want to just tap it on the top and slide it out. Take your fork, make sure that the cables are on the outside of the fork and slide that in. Now that we have the fork on the frame, we want to add the first spacer. Make sure it clicks into place. Got the second spacer, the first spacer you remove, and then we'll add our crown. Once we get the crown on place, we'll reinstall the top cap. Let's snug that down. So once we got your crown in place and the top cap secured, we'll want to tighten the bolts for the crown. Go ahead and snug those down using your 6mm hex key. Once we have all those snug down, we'll want to remove these two plates on top for your handlebars. Those will be using a 5mm hex key and just loosen all the bolts. And you want to grab your handlebar. Make sure that the cables are the right orientation. You see this one was spun around, so just make sure that all the cables are in the front and they're not twisted or binded, and go ahead and place that right there, right in the middle. And we'll grab our clamps that we set aside and we'll reinstall those. Now just roughly align your handlebars for now. We'll align them perfectly later, but for now just get them in the right position and snug the bolts down. So once we have our handlebars all in place, the next step is to get our front wheel on the bike. To pull out the axle, you want to rotate it to the left, take it out. On the right side of the fork, you have a nut. You want to keep that, make sure not to lose that. So just set that aside. Grab your front wheel, spin it in, making sure that the holes on the hub line up with the holes on the fork. Once that's all lined up, go ahead and grab your axle, slide it through. Go ahead, wiggle it until it goes all the way in, and then put your nut on the right side. Once you got the axle in place, nut on the right side, you want to take your 8mm hex key and tighten down the axle. Once that's tight, you want to take your 4mm hex key and tighten the bolts on the front of the fork. There's two on each dropout. Tighten those and do the same to the other side. So now that we have our whole front set up, we want to put our pedals on next. Our pedals are labeled green for the left and red for the right. You can see the L and R on them. We'll start by putting on our right pedal on first. Right threaded, so you want to turn to the right. Next, we'll put the left pedal on. The left pedal is a reverse thread, so we'll want to turn to the left counterclockwise. So now we'll take our 50mm open-ended wrench and we'll tighten down our pedals. Okay, so next we'll install our LCD screen. Take your LCD, open up the latches. It'll have the button pre-wired onto it. You can let that hang for now. Slide it under the handlebar. Close the clamps and install the hardware. Use your 2mm hex key to tighten up the hardware. Alright, so we got our LCD tight. Next we'll want to install the buttons for your LCD. Using your 2mm hex key, loosen the bolt on the back side of the buttons. Set that on the bar and reinstall the bolt. Once we have our buttons in place, we'll want to install our USB. The USB will have a small arrow on the connector. The LCD will have the same arrow. On the LCD, you'll have a cover covering the port. Just remove the cover and install the USB with the arrow facing up. Next, we'll put on our mount for the USB. Just slide on over the handlebar, turn it around, grab your hardware and slip it through. Go ahead and use your 2mm hex key to fasten the hardware. spin that around. Make sure the USB port is facing outwards. Take your USB cable, run it through the mount, arrow facing up, connect it to the back of the LCD on the left side. So next we'll install the LED front light. We'll line up the arrows on the connectors and push them together firmly. Once that's connected, we want to slide our sleeve in, place it into the mount, and put our hardware in. Alright, so next step, we'll want to install the battery on your bike. The keys to the battery will come mounted to the handlebar. You want to grab your key, insert it into the keyhole, and unlock the compartment, turning it to the left. Next, you'll take your battery. The battery has an on and switch on the top, a notch at the bottom. We want to have the notch aiming towards the bottom. Put the bottom in first, so the latch is in place. Once the latch is in place, you can hold it with one hand, push the lever to the left, and push up on the battery. Once the battery is in place, lock the battery by turning the key to the right. So once we're all done with the assembly, next step is you want to turn your battery on. You want to reach down to the bottom of the right side of the frame, flip the switch. Once you got the battery on, you hold the I button for about 3 seconds, get your screen to turn on. Your lights will come on automatically. Once the lights are on, you can use your plus and minus buttons on your control here to go through the pedal assist levels 1 through 5. Make sure your bolts are all tight on your fork and on the handlebar. Make sure everything's tight, ready to go. Pedals are tight. Make sure to get some air in your tires. And once you're all done with that, you're all set to go on the road with your SONDORS MadMods Retro.